Well, here I am back again with the Let's Go games. A few months ago, I showed off an Eevee solo run of Let's Go Eevee, as a means of assessing the allegedly non-existent difficulties of these games in a way that I felt was the most appropriate for such a starter-centered remake, and another excuse to test out my own trainer battle-only rule set that I've been exploring across runs of various Pokemon titles. I wouldn't have called that Eevee run hard exactly, but near the end there was a degree of luck involved even with the starter Eevee's vast array of tutor moves. At the time, I floated the idea of attempting the same run in Let's Go Pikachu for comparison's sake, suggesting that, on paper at least, Pikachu would be in for a harder time. After some requests from commenters and patrons, I decided to give it a go, so here we are. To quickly sum up my process if you didn't watch the earlier video, I'm only allowing myself to use static trainer battles as a source of experience. No rare candies or items that boost EVs, and no wild battles beyond those required by game mechanics. In the Let's Go games, that means fulfilling certain gym requirements. As I found out with Eevee, it's also kind of necessary in the early game for a different reason. Namely, that with the changes to the experience formula in modern Pokemon, there isn't enough to go around from only fighting the trainers before Brock for the starters to be able to feasibly take on the first gym. Pikachu learns Double Kick at level 9, which it absolutely needs to have any chance against Brock. It'll wear down his Geodude and Onix, but Pikachu will take a good bit of damage in return, especially from Onix's Headbutt. I might have actually lost if not for a lucky crit on Onix with the first Double Kick. Pikachu's defensive stats are all lower than Eevee's, so constantly being in danger of fainting is going to be a recurring theme in this run. That's not the case with the first Jesse and James battle, though, where Pikachu can take out both Ekans and Koffing while they usually waste turns attacking its placeholder partner. It's in Cerulean City where this run really starts to diverge from Let's Go Eevee. In that game, this is where Eevee can pick up the first 3 of their many coverage options. Pikachu, on the other hand, gets a physical electric move that's stronger than Thunder Shock. It has increased priority and always crits, but Zippy Zap isn't doing a thing for Pikachu's move pool diversity. It does handily deal with the Rivals team alongside Double Kick plus Headbutt from Brock, but it's not as though the rival is all that threatening yet anyway. The same can be said for Cerulean Gym, which Pikachu can breeze through despite again taking a fair amount of damage itself. After grabbing the very useful Dig TM from the Rocket Grunt in Cerulean, we can head down to the SS Anne and battle the rival again. Not much new to mention here, though. The rival has a Pidgeotto now, but Pikachu has Thunderbolt, so you can guess how that goes. The worst thing that can happen is Oddish using Sleep Powder and stalling for time. Once the ship leaves, there's another easy fight against Mina from Alola. Her Pokemon can stall with Sing and Light Screen, but their damaging options are extremely limited. Lieutenant Surge, meanwhile, is more of a mixed bag. Unlike Eevee, Pikachu doesn't have to worry about being outsped, and it has enough attack to one-shot both Voltorb and Magnemite with Dig. But Raichu still takes 2, and even its resisted Thunderbolt hits hard. Pikachu truly is a glass cannon among starters. There are, however, times when it fails hard even at the cannon part. Pikachu still doesn't have an easy answer to ground types, and now that they've started carrying ground moves, it can be at serious risk of fainting even in some generic battles. They're not even Pikachu's only problem either. It struggles against grass types as well, as evidenced by the next rival battle where his Oddish has evolved. Headbutt is a 3-hit KO on Gloom, giving it plenty of time to put me to sleep and deal a bunch of damage. The rival's starter has also evolved, but as it's always a Jolteon in this game, Dig takes care of it easily. While we're on the rival, though, does anyone else find it weird that he evolves his starter in these games instead of being forced to stick with the more marketable base version like the player has to? I know that the rival in yellow evolves his Eevee, but come on. If Red in Gens 2 and 4 can get away with using an unevolved Pikachu in some of the toughest in-game battles in the series, surely the developers could have done the same for Trace here. Leaving that aside, we can head into Celadon, where Pikachu finally gets a tutor move of a different type, the flying move Floaty Fall. It's not going to come into play right away, because not much in the nearby rocket hideout is weak to flying. For the second Jesse and James fight, Thunderbolt is actually the way to go over Dig, since it's a more reliable two-shot on both Arbok and Weezing. But Pikachu still has to get a little lucky with what moves they pick and what they do to the placeholder Pokemon, as their damage output is much higher than it was back in Mount Moon. The following fight against Archer isn't even worth talking about. But then we come to Giovanni, and he's a different story entirely. I had to leave the hideout and battle the channelers in Pokemon Tower for an extra 2 levels, and even then this fight was a major hurdle. Persian always leads with Fake Out, and after that it can deal significant damage with Slash. It's a 2-shot with any of Pikachu's attacks, even Brick Break learned via TM from Route 10. So I chose to lead with Floaty Fall in the hopes of activating its 30% flinch chance. That didn't work out, unfortunately, leaving me at low health for Rhyhorn. Its Drill Run obliterates Pikachu, and I don't have any way to one-shot it before that happens, but I got a lucky friendship miss, so I was able to claim victory. If you watch the Eevee video, you'll already know how important the friendship mechanic will be for soloing in the late game, but Pikachu with its worst defenses and ground weakness has to rely on RNG even earlier. Erica, at least, isn't quite as luck-based, although the buff to Mega Drain in the Let's Go games means that Pikachu can't take more than 2 of them. Floaty Fall is a 2-hit KO on Tangela and Vileplume, and cleanly one-shots Weepinbell, though. So the biggest concern is the move's 5% chance to miss. Were they seriously worried that Pikachu with a flying move would be overpowered, so they had to give it less than perfect accuracy? Why do you hate your own mascot this much, Game Freak? Next up is another Jesse and James battle, and while their Pokemon have only gained 2 levels since the Rocket Hideout, they're even more dangerous here, especially Weezing with its new Sludge Bomb. I had to sacrifice 2 placeholders in this battle to get through it, and maybe you consider that cheating, but it's a 2-on-1 with an unevolved Pokemon with terrible defenses. Give me a bit of a break here. The areas around Fuchsia and Saffron are the most trainer-heavy in the entire game, which means lots of opportunities for experience. More importantly, Fuchsia City is where Pikachu can pick up its 3rd and final tutor move, Splishy Splash. Finally, it doesn't have to fear ground types in generic battles. Koga, meanwhile, isn't quite so straightforward, especially since the Let's Go games are deceptively better about keeping up with your own levels than the older Kanto games. I've done similar runs in Gens 1 and 3, and where in those games I'll be fighting Koga at around a 20 level advantage after all those root trainers, here Pikachu is only around 6 levels higher. The power difference is easily noticeable, because Dig isn't a one-shot on either Muck or Weezing. You have to get a little lucky with a few things, like when Koga's Pokemon use Protect, or how long it takes Pikachu to shake off poison due to friendship. At least his Venomoth and Golbat fall instantly to Floaty Fall and Thunderbolt respectively, so the battle's pretty much over at that point unless poison is an issue. Over in Saffron, there's a series of battles in Sylph Company before we can take on the next gym. Blue is unexpectedly easy, with the combination of Floaty Fall for Exeggutor and Thunderbolt for Charizard. The double battle against Archer is easy to cheese by using Dig to avoid Electrode's self-destruct. And now that Pikachu has those extra levels, Jesse and James are less of a threat than they were before. That leaves Giovanni, and Pikachu can have some sweet revenge thanks to Splishy Splash. The lead Persian is still annoying, but after that, Pikachu's new water move easily takes out Rhyhorn in one hit and Nidoqueen in two. Fortunately, his Nidoqueen doesn't have any ground moves, but that's going to change soon. On to Sabrina now, who's less of a clean sweep. Mr. Mime can weaken Floaty Fall with Reflect, and both Slowbro and Jinx can put Pikachu to sleep, although the former is arranged to one-shot with Thunderbolt. Additionally, Alakazam can survive one Floaty Fall even without Reflect up. Having done this fight a few times, I've learned that Pikachu has just enough HP to take two Psychics, so the margin of error here isn't great. Blaine is less of a threat, because all of his Pokemon except Arcanine are one-shots with Dig. Arcanine is also the only one of the four with lower special defense, so Splishy Splash will hit it harder. But even with missing the knockout, it'll take itself out with Flare Blitz recoil. I wish I could say that the final battle against Giovanni is similarly easy with Splishy Splash putting in the work, but unfortunately both of the Nidos take two hits, and they both have Earthquake. Pikachu can potentially survive Nidoqueen's Earthquake, but not Nidoking's, so you have to hope for some luck with either crits, flinches from Floaty Fall, or friendship misses. Still, I can say from experience that doing this fight solo in yellow is much, much worse. Anyway, back to Let's Go, and to the rival battle before Victory Road. Pidgeot and Jolteon are easy knockouts and don't pose any threat, but Vileplume and Marowak aren't, even with Pikachu's super effective coverage. It can't stand up to their Petal Dance and Bone Meringue together, or Bone Meringue at all for that matter, so you just have to get lucky. Getting lucky for Pikachu does entail one of three different things going its way, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but this is shaping up to be a much less consistent run than Eevee's. And that trend is only going to continue in the Elite Four. Pikachu doesn't have the same issue that Eevee did with having to choose carefully from its selection of tutor moves. The combination of Thunderbolt, Floaty Fall, and Splishy Splash will cover most of what it faces in the Elite Four, with the fourth move slot being open for whatever TMs it might need. I made sure to grab Reflect from the Celadon department store like in the last run, and for Pikachu I also bought Iron Tail for the single instance in which steel coverage matters here, in the battle against Lorelei. Provided you don't miss with its mere 70% accuracy, Iron Tail will one-shot Lorelei's Jinx. Thunderbolt does the same to Cloyster, but her other three Pokemon have enough special defense to need two hits. Like in a few other battles before this translates into leading on each of them with Floaty Fall and hoping for a flinch. Lapras is bulky enough to need two Thunderbolts, but Pikachu should be able to make it through as long as it gets a single flinch. So if you got lucky with Dugong, Lapras and Slowbro should be doable without relying on RNG. For Bruno, I had to break out the substitute strategies with Eevee, but Pikachu's better offense and lack of fighting weakness allow it to be more aggressive. Onix, Hitmonlee, and potentially Hitmonchan are all one-hit KO'd by one of the tutor moves. But, as you probably guessed from how I'm describing it, Bruno's other Pokemon are not. Pikachu will need to get some kind of luck with one of Poliwrath or Machamp. The latter does have Earthquake, but Pikachu can just barely tank the hit. With all this reliance on Floaty Fall, though, you just kind of have to hope that its chance to miss doesn't mess you up when you need it most. The extra attack also helps out against Agatha, allowing Pikachu to one-shot her first Gengar and possibly her second, whereas Eevee couldn't. With Thunderbolt for Golbat, that leaves only Arbok and Weezing needing to be softened up first. Pikachu can take a hit from both of them and survive too, so in order to lose this fight, pretty much everything has to go wrong all at once. Floaty Fall misses or never flinches, and you miss the range on either the second Gengar or Golbat, and you never get a crit or a friendship miss either. Those are pretty good odds, at least by the standards of this run. On to Lance now, and as long as you hit a pretty favorable range on Aerodactyl, his first 3 Pokemon will all fall quickly to Thunderbolt. Pikachu even outspeeds Aerodactyl, something that Eevee couldn't manage. Charizard took 1 Thunderbolt and responded with Hyper Beam, and I took advantage of its recharge turn to set up Reflect for Dragonite. This was absolutely necessary, as Dragonite's Outrage is devastating even with the extra defense, and without a crit it'll take 3 hits. I got very lucky at the end with Pikachu staying alive on 1 HP due to Friendship, but as with all the other battles in the Elite Four, there were plenty of other ways that this could have gone wrong. Does that carry over to the champion battle? Well, what do you think? This has been one long gauntlet hoping the RNG lines up in my favor, and that's not about to change now. None of the rivals' Pokemon are one-shots anymore, and Pikachu will be lucky to survive more than 2 hits from anything here. Let's look at my successful battle and count up everything that had to go right. I got a flinch against Mega Pidgeot, but then got a Floaty Fall miss against Vileplume, but it spent its turn setting up Reflect, and then I one-shot it with a Friendship crit on the next turn. I ate a Flare Blitz from Rapidash, and only dodged Marowak's Bone Meringue with the power of Friendship. I got some more flinch luck with Slowbro, and then I was so worried I'd miss another flinch, I went for Dig against Jolteon and got a second Friendship crit. Wow, that sure is an ending. Now, I realize that editing the run like I have gives off the impression that the Elite Four wasn't too challenging, but the reality was that getting all those luck-based factors to line up in each fight was a massive pain. I know there are challenge runners out there who insist on doing the Elite Four without saving in between members, and sometimes they do so with even weaker Pokemon than Pikachu, but I just can't imagine having that much patience. Having done both of these runs, I'm struck by the thought that the Let's Go game's reputation for being insultingly easy is perhaps only due to a lack of imagination. There's ample room here for difficult challenge runs, even if there are no abilities or items and it's easier to build up a full team. To further prove that point, I even went and completed this exact same run in Pokemon Yellow. And while there's no friendship mechanic or easy flinching to rely on in Gen 1, Pikachu nevertheless has a much tougher time at certain points. I realize though that Gen 1 challenge runs are all over the place here on YouTube, so to not compete with much more skilled PokeTubers, I've made the video of that run available as bonus content for my patrons. If you're interested, I'd really appreciate it if you supported the channel by becoming a patron yourself. And you'd not only get to enjoy occasional extra content like that, but also early access to all of my regular videos. In any case, please like the video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed it. And tell me in the comments what you think of these sorts of runs and if you'd like to see me cover them in any other games. Thank you all for watching. Au revoir!